How's that for a slice of fried gold?
You think this is a fucking costume? This is a way of life.
I'll be back.
Just a flesh wound. I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains.
Take your sticking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
Should have been recording that.
I know.
Because
Well,
it was referencing the last episode, so it would have been, we fucked up.
Should I say it again?
Yeah, say all that again, Gary.
yeah. And go.
So I told my wife the joke that ended the last episode, and she fucking hated it. That's
that's like the Cliff Notes version of it. That's the that's the
she
Wikipedia
thought I sounded
summary.
like an idiot, and that's our marriage.
Well, there it is.
And then I told Gary that my wife hears all of my stuff. So that vibe that Gary just felt, that's ever present in the Davis household. So yeah.
Well, okay.
Now you're all caught up.
Yeah, it didn't hit quite the same as it did the first time, honestly.
No,
the story
no.
was, well,
Premium
all right.
content.
It would have really hit if people had been here to see the blank stare that she gave me.
next time you got to live stream it. Next time,
Right.
you start live streaming you workshopping jokes to your wife.
Like it's almost as though she is herself a computer, and then she's trying to she's AI, and she's like running through options in her head on how she thinks I want her to respond to what I just said.
Oh man! All right, let's do this. Let's do this second episode, fellas.
All right.
All right. Well, hello.
Woo.
Welcome to Cinema Shock. This is the podcast exploring the stories behind your favorite cult and genre films. We do all the research so that you don't have to. And this is the last podcast you'll ever need about hackers. I'm one of your hosts, Gary Horde.
You said that about the last episode of Hackers.
Yeah, that's weird. You made me a liar. You made me a liar if you're not a subscriber to Cinema Shock Plus. Because this is split into two parts, and now it is no longer just the last one. You need the first part that you can catch up on.
Otherwise you're going to be incredibly confused. I am your other host, Justin Bishop.
And I'm writer comedian Mr. Todd A. Davis. Thank you for joining us for the latest episode in our series Virtual Insanity, the cyber thrillers of 1995.
All right, so in our last episode, we dug into the roots of hacker culture and the real-life figures who helped to inspire the movie Hackers. We focused on how screenwriter Raphael Moreau embedded himself in that world, consulting with actual hackers to make sure that his script rang true. And there's a reason that we spent so much time on that. The filmmakers behind Hackers weren't interested in some cartoonish Hollywood version of hacking. They wanted a movie that felt real and authentic, and they wanted to capture the spirit and the look and the attitude of this whole underground movement. And that meant one very important thing going into production. The actors who were playing the hackers had to look the part, and more importantly, they had to believably be the part. So prior to filming, the cast were put through a kind of hacker boot camp, I think is the best term for it, to help them look credible on screen. Now, this boot camp included rollerblading lessons, which has nothing to do with hacking, but they still needed to learn how to do it for the movie, and also training sessions with real-life hackers to help the cast to look like they knew what the hell they were doing when they sat in front of a computer screen.
Oh, hell yes. Hacker boot camp. This is the part I'm excited for, because it's exactly what it sounds like if you took like Mountain Dew and you mix it with rollerblades and anxiety from your dial-up, and you're getting coached by real hackers so you don't look like a toddler rage tweeting on an iPad. So they're
That's our president.
Yeah, I'm picturing like nerds. Like, okay, Angelina, here's your inline skates. Here's a computer terminal. And this is your guy in a trench coat who hasn't touched grass. It's President Reagan. He's going to teach you how to social engineer, and he's going to light a cigarette with a soldering iron. He's going to talk to you about rootkits and backdoor access. He's going to teach you how to slouch and throw up from too many kick. Angelina,
Come back.
Can you come back, please?
Well, I think they
Oh.
weren't actually teaching them how to hack. It was more like you need to look like you know what a computer is. And
I
when
was
you're
I
And
was
when-
gonna actually say, yeah, for real, hacker boot camp wasn't just it was an actual hacker boot camp. It was like tech theater. It's designed to help you build. It's designed to make muscle memory. For like what
Yeah, yeah.
well they want like physical coordination for like rollerblading or something, but they wanted you to look believable when you're typing on a computer.
and like you're not even thinking about it. Like it's just second nature to you, basically.
Yeah. What big challenge that happens in films like this is that actors tend to look stiff or awkward when they're typing on a keyboard or something. So the camp is like training them how to hit keystrokes, basically, in like a rhythmically like natural look. Like they often have like scripts or something, or and then there's like fake terminal like outputs that are going up on the screen or whatever. But they give them like walkthroughs of doing this. And even more important, I think it's like attitude, like the vibe of a hacker, rebellious, a little arrogant, all of that. It's like part of the training too. It's like hacker theater class is how to think of it, basically.
Yeah, and this might be getting ahead of the timeline a little bit, but they did, when they were filming, they would have like these computers programmed with, preset screens, like on the screen, graphics. The actor would be typing away, and there would be like one key, like the P key. When they hit that, they knew that it was going to change the screen to the new screen. So they looked like they were kind of actually prompting it to move along. So they'd be typing away, and it'd just be like, gibberish typing, and then they would know at a certain point, I need to hit the P, and it's going to change what's on my screen. It's pretty clever.
There's a cool website you could go to that is like a hacker computer screen, basically, and it's like you can type anything on your keyboard, but it's just like loading gibberish and like code on the screen, and so it makes it look like you're
hacking.
Yeah, like you're hacking or like you're coding or whatever. It just makes it look like you're working for some people, I think.
That's funny. That's like the high tech equivalent of like just putting on sunglasses and going to sleep at your desk.
Right. Exactly.
So the consultants that were brought in included Tristan Lewis, the notorious Kevin Mitnick, and a teenage hacker named Nicholas Jarecki, who was actually just 15 years old at the time. And he was ended up being credited as a technical consultant on the final film. And in fact, Jarecki's time working on hackers actually inspired him to pursue filmmaking. He kind of figured out like what a director is and what a director does, and got really like interested in that, and eventually went on to become a director himself.
We'll come back to him because I know you want to talk about him, but I do want to mention that Kevin Mitnick, he's an infamous, it was called a phone phreaker. He was arrested by the FBI in 1995, right around the time that Hackers was released. He was essentially like the Voldemort of real world hacking. His so his name on the consulting credit would like give it serious street cred.
Yeah.
Like if like Fast and the Furious happened and Vin Diesel got driving tips from the Zodiac Killer or something, like it would be. This man was banned from touching a computer without adult supervision. At one
just
point.
like Crash Override.
Yeah,
in the movie.
And now he's helping Matthew Lillard learn how to pwn a fax machine. So
it's funny because a lot of these guys went on to become like security consultants.
I was going to say, so my next thing was going to be Kevin Mitnick, like the security training we get at my job. Kevin Mitnick recorded like most of like the videos for it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that's why I looked him up, because I was just like, who the hell is this guy? And I looked him up and found out he was like a really famous hacker. So, and he's mentioned as a consultant, and sources I looked up vary on how involved he actually was. Like he in interviews is downplayed much formal credit, but insiders and early reports like have him as like one of the people they consulted for authenticity. But what's important here is his symbolic presence. He was the name in hacker mythology at the time.
Street cred. Yeah.
By the mid-90s, his arrests were like all over the news. So whether he directly trained the cast or just inspired stuff, his legend bleeds through to the DNA of the movie.
Right. Hmm. Yeah. So, and Nicholas Jarecki, he had also already kind of made a name for himself, even though he was only 15 years old at the time. But in the hacker world, this kid was known because at the age of 12 years old, he hacked, get this, the Penn and Teller website. He hacked the Penn and Teller website as part of a challenge that was issued by Penn Jillette himself. Penn Jillette put out a challenge because Penn Jillette has this like obsessive like interest in hacking, which is probably why he ended up in the movie. But he put out this, of course, this is at the time when people are, hacking with telephones and stuff like we were talking about in earlier. But Penn Jillette's like, the first person to be able to hack the Penn and Teller website, I will give you my location and I will meet you in real life. So that was the prize.
Wow.
And yeah, and Nicholas Jarecki won. 12 years old. He hacked the Penn and Teller website and ended up meeting Penn Jillette as a result of it.
That's crazy. Props to Penn and Teller because they have that whole show that's based around like Fool Us or whatever. Like they want you to like who could do the magic trick that we don't understand and that kind of thing. So good for them. Imagine being in high school and you have to skip geometry and your excuse is like, sorry, I'm a consultant. So I had to be in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I gotta make sure Johnny Lee Miller knows how to type good.
So you might be wondering, what about Fiber Optic, Mark Abene? Like, he was a central inspiration for the script, so why wasn't he on the set consulting? Well, he couldn't because he was in jail. He was in prison. He was actually sentenced to a year in federal prison for unauthorized access to phone company networks. Now, his actions, they had been non-destructive. They didn't lead to any financial gain, but the government came down kind of hard on him. And a lot of people in the hacker community saw this sentence. It's a pretty harsh sentence for what he did. They saw it as an attempt to kind of make an example out of him, especially given his visibility in the media, because he popped up on TV shows and in magazines and newspaper as sort of like the unofficial hacker spokesperson. So people knew who he was. So this was a high-profile get for the federal government. So they threw him. He's 22 years old, threw him in jail for a year.
It would be like if like they had gotten Matthew Lillard at the end of this movie or something, like he was the face that popped up on the screen. But for real, like while everyone else was learning how to fake hack, Mark Abene was doing real time for being curious. Basically, the government said this guy's he's getting too close. Throw him in the clink before he gives Angelina Jolie the ability to give viruses to people.
She's probably given a few.
I was gonna say on computers.
I'm sorry, Angelina. I don't mean it. I don't mean it, Angie.
No. I love Angelina Jolie.
I love
his crime, not stealing, not destroying, just existing on a network.
Curiosity. His crime is curiosity.
His conviction was like super controversial. Many thought that the charges and sentence were disproportionately harsh, given that he was non-destructive. None of his activities, like he didn't steal anything. Like, fun fact, seriously, like his sentence got like huge backlash. Like this group called the Electronic Frontier Foundation stepped in. Like a huge part of the hacking community looked at him like a martyr. And his case now, I was reading, is taught in law schools when discussing overreach in law enforcement and like digital law enforcement, especially.
I would think there would also be like a chapter on like cruel and unusual because
it's like if you walked into a store and threw if I walked into a grocery store and threw a water balloon at a clerk, and then got arrested for attempted murder.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So filming on Hackers officially began in September of 1994, starting on location in Manhattan, and that's where all the school scenes and many of the street-level exteriors were shot. Then after a few weeks, the production packed up and moved across the Atlantic to London, where most of the film's interior scenes were captured on sound stages. They're shooting at Pinewood Studios. And that included a massive set built to replicate Grand Central Station.
Let's start in Manhattan. We'll shoot the high school scenes where the kids can inexplicably rollerblade through halls like it's Tony Hawk's public.
It was the
school
90s.
simulator.
We were allowed to do that in the 90s.
Yeah. Fun fact: you can literally see the Twin Towers, by the way, in some shots because it's 95. So
Because they were still there.
Yeah, and you got to bleed Netscape and New Order, and halfway through they jump to London, though, like you said, to build a giant ass Grand Central Station replica because nothing says budget efficiency like shipping the American movie to the UK to build New York in a warehouse.
Well, they couldn't exactly shoot in Grand Central Station, like not with the stuff that they were doing in Grand Central Station. So it made sense. Plus, Pinewood is one of the biggest indoor sound stages in the world. So
True.
I feel like when I'm actually joking around, like you don't get it, and then my dumbest jokes are the ones that you really latch on to. No, because I was gonna say for real, it wasn't just for cost; it was like control because they could build like hyper stylized sets without the limitations of actually being on location and that kind of thing. So
yeah, plus they've also got their visual effects guys are all based in the UK. Ian Softly's based in the UK, so there are practical reasons for them to be shooting there. Plus, honestly, the labor was probably cheaper.
Yeah. And I mean, they wanted it to feel gritty, like they're in New York, but they had to. Yeah, you do what you got to do to.
It's also a stylized version of New York at a lot of times.
Yeah.
Even as cameras rolled, the production continued to involve members of the hacker community, and two of the most prominent consultants on set were Dave Buchwald, who, like Mark Abney, had been part of the Legion of Doom, and Omar Wasso, who is, I think, a college professor somewhere right now. Like, he's like a big time guy. But their job at the time was to ensure the actors' on-screen actions and terminology stayed grounded in reality, and they would regularly make suggestions to director Ian Softly to kind of make sure things were staying accurate.
They made suggestions and some got used. A lot of them got steamrolled by Softly's vision. They were like the nerd shamans, though, and their mission is to stop the actors from typing like confused idiots and saying mainframe like it's a Harry Potter spell.
One battle that they didn't win, though, was over how hacking itself would be visualized on screen. Because you see, in real life, hacking is, well, it's just not very cinematic. It's mostly just typing lines of code into a terminal window. Like, there's nothing exciting about how it looks. And Wasow advocated for keeping it more grounded, show more screens, more actual text, more realism. But Softly kind of pushed back against that. He needed something that the audience could feel, something that would communicate what it was like to be in the head of a hacker. He wanted it to visually look like how the hackers would have felt, like excited about what they were doing. Mm-hmm. And that's when Softly came up with the concept of what he called the City of Text, a stylized cyberspace with skyscrapers made of scrolling data designed to evoke the sensory overload and wonder that came with being online in the mid-1990s.
This is the fun part for me. I was waiting for this, and I knew this was coming, like when I was watching the movie. Like I was ready to see this again.
I love it.
For the first time in a long time. And I was expecting to shit on it. Now I watch it and I was like, how would a hacker feel being online in 1995? Not what they see, but like what they actually like imagine. Mm-hmm. It's almost like a precursor to like VR, but way before like tech caught up to that.
Right.
It works.
And I saw like Softly was inspired. I think he had mentioned Neuromancer, Cyberpunk, early Apple UI. He mentioned like the aesthetics.
Yeah, they mentioned Neuromancer a good bit when they're talking about the making of the movie. I think that's one of the things that he made all the cast members read Neuromancer. Which is kind of cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
He loved the physicality of urban cityscapes. He said he and Peter Chang like took cues from Metropolis, Blade Runner. All right, they even said like early arcade cabinet art.
Oh wow,
I could see that. Yeah,
but I was watching it and especially the ending shot because I used to do this. And it didn't hit me until I was watching this, but like when you look at like the motherboard in a PC or something like that, and you can look at it and see it almost as though it's like a little city or something.
Yep.
I don't know why, or maybe I had forgotten or something, but like I just had not made the connection with hackers with that. Like I think there were times where I've like laughed and made fun of it, where I've just been like, that's not what fucking hack it looks like. That's stupid. But this time watching it, I'm like, that's the best way to visualize something.
Right? Yeah,
like
it's more exciting. Way more
Yeah.
exciting than someone just typing code.
It's fun to watch it. I was like, and it looks fucking sick. In the place where the plague is in Penn Jillette, where they're hanging out, I'm like, that's a cool looking room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and so the problem when it came to showing these hacking scenes is that in 1994, computer effects were still in their kind of awkward teenage years. For more proof on that, see Virtuosity and Johnny Mnemonic, which all came out at the same time as this one within a couple of months. So Softly and his visual effects supervisor, Peter Chang, who Gary mentioned, they came up with a workaround. Instead of using CGI, they would build physical models of this virtual city and shoot them on sound stages at Pinewood Studios using motion control cameras. And then the scrolling text on the buildings would be, or the quote-unquote buildings, the buildings of data, would be added in post-production frame by painstaking frame. So when you see this in the movie, that's not CG. That is them physically moving a camera through a physical space where they built these like plexiglass buildings.
Wow.
And they used motion control because they could replicate the movement so that they could go in afterwards and draw in the actual text. It's wild.
Looks dope.
Yeah.
It looks really good.
Like literal little skyscrapers
Yeah.
on like Pinewood sound stages, just with scrolling code like projected on.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of saw some of this, like you're talking about, like 1994 CGI tech wasn't out of diapers yet. So you could have gone janky polygons.
It would have looked like Johnny Mnemonic.
Like Johnny Mnemonic or something. Yeah.
And I think this looks more believable.
And I guess it just helps to know that they're not going for realism in the visuals. They intentionally are stylizing the hacking sequences.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. And I you mentioned that scene where Fisher Stevens comes rolling in into his like lair with Penn Jillette, and he comes rolling in and on a skateboard, and there's those towers that look like the same kind of data towers that you see in the hacking scenes. But those are like physically there on set. So they actually had to use motion control cameras for that scene too, only with Fisher Stevens in it. So they had to like record him coming in. And then because that was a physical set, Peter Chang and his team had to go in using that motion control camera and move the camera frame by frame afterwards and move that text up and down physically.
That's crazy. Yeah.
So they would go in, they'd move it down, shoot a frame, move it down, shoot a frame. And they had to do it like all overnight because they didn't want to come in the next day and something had been moved and then everything's screwed up. You have to start all over. So they did that frame by frame. Yeah. And then you mentioned the cityscape, like at that final shot, but also the first shot, or one of the first shots after the prologue, I guess, when they're coming into New York, and there's that overhead shot of New York that then transitions into like a motherboard. Such a good shot. And they couldn't do motion control on that because you can't put motion control camera on a helicopter or an airplane or whatever they were using to get those shots of New York. So they just had to like build a model that was a motherboard that was shaped like Manhattan and had to just line it up with the shots that they had taken with an airplane going over the city. But it's such a smooth transition. It's like perfectly done. It's so cool, I think. And you've got the little lines of like data shooting through the grid, like they're the cars on the road. It's like, it's a great concept and it's executed really well. But we mentioned Peter Chang, he's like the head honcho in charge on the visual effects side of this thing. And Peter Chang, this is fairly early on in his career, but he would go on to become one of the most respected visual effects supervisors in the industry. But back in the 80s, before this, he got to start doing optical effects. And he worked on films like Jim Henson's Labyrinth and Little Shop of Horrors. He's a British guy, so he's shooting over at Pinewood Studios. So he did both of those movies. And then in 1998, after this movie, he founded a visual effects company called Double Negative, which was later rebranded as DNEG, D-N-E-G, all caps. And their first project, Gary, you're going to dig this, Pitch Black.
Nice.
Hey.
All right. I dig that.
Yeah. They also did Chronicles of Riddick years later, but they've also, in the years since, I mean, I cannot name everything they've worked on, but they've worked on the Harry Potter movies. They worked on MCU movies, DC movies, including Christopher Nolan's Batman movies, James Bond movies, the Mission Impossible films, Fast and the Furious films. I guess Vin Diesel just likes them. And they are now one of the most successful FX houses in the industry. They have won 8 Academy Awards for their work on Inception, Interstellar, Ex Machina, Blade Runner 2049, First Man, Tenet, and Dune. They also worked on the 3rd season of Star Trek Discovery.
Hey, all right.
And as of
Yeah,
and as of this recording, the most recent films that they've been involved with that have already been released have been the Minecraft movie, which is like still out, Scott Derrickson's The Gorge, which came out recently, and Bong Joon-ho's Mickey 17. They're killing.
Just watch both those movies.
Yeah, both very good. Very good movies.
Both very good. Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Killer soundtracks and stuff too.
Yeah.
That's a side note.
Yes, thank you. But it wasn't just Chang who brought this digital dreamscape to life. Cinematographer Andre Sekula, fresh off of Pulp Fiction, worked very closely with production designer John Beard to shape the film's unique visual style. Now, Beard, who had previously designed Terry Gilliam's Brazil, which is a hell of a feat of production design, he helped to create the layered, slightly surreal, slightly heightened world of Hackers, a present-day setting with one foot firmly planted in the near future. John Beard's good. Like, his pre-Hackers credits also include projects as diverse as Martin Scorsese's The Last Temptation of Christ and Jim Henson's The Storyteller.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Perfect.
Yeah. Now, that near future aesthetic extended to every part of the production, especially the wardrobe, because you can't talk about Hackers without talking about their fucking outfits.
You really do have to talk about it.
You have to. And those were from costume designer Roger Burton, who said that he tried to dress the characters the way teenagers might dress 15 seconds into the future. That's a direct quote from him. Eccentric, DIY, tech adjacent, but still somewhat grounded in the moment. His quote about them being dressed 15 seconds in the future kind of reminded me of, from our Virtuosity episode, Brett Leonard describing the look of that film as being 5 minutes into the future.
That seems to be a theme we keep like hitting, this like 5 minutes into the future thing.
Yeah.
The unknown that's right around the corner.
Yeah, like this is where we're headed. It's not like in a crazy future where you'll look back on it 20 years from now and be like, what were they thinking? I always remember like being a kid and seeing like a Mission Impossible episode from the 70s or whatever. They were trying to convince the guy that he was in the future, and the future was 1980 something or whatever. And like people were moving around on jetpacks. I was just looking at the picture and I just wanted to just comment on it. Like it looks like they're ready to go into a rave in a Game Boy Color. Like Angelina Jolie's outfit looks like she is ready to be a Pokemon trader. Matthew Lillard looks like I cyber robbed a thrift store.
Well, he kind of looks like post-apocalyptic Pippi Longstocking.
Yeah, he's like, I'm a prophet of Wi-Fi.
Yeah, but Angelina Jolie, like she wears like that white outfit she wears like during the party scene. That's like a fencing top, whatever you call it. That's a fencing top. She wears like a Quicksilver like wetsuit kind of top. He repurposed a lot of stuff. Roger Burton did, and utilized them in ways that wouldn't normally be. Like they were things that were functional, like designed for function, and he redesigned them or repurposed them for fashion. Like Johnny Lee Miller's look is very militaristic almost, and he's got like leather motorcycle jackets, even though he doesn't ride a motorcycle. And I mean, I wouldn't wear anything that anyone wears in this movie, but I think it looks pretty cool. Like I think it's very memorable. Especially Matthew Lillard's outfits are the wildest, but with his like cut up Lou Reed shirts and Dead Kennedys t-shirts and stuff. Like
I feel like there's like people find an easy path trying to shit on Matthew Lillard, and yet he's the guy in this movie that I'm just like, yeah, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
He's exactly what he's supposed to be.
He is that guy. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Well, behind all of this creative chaos was a producer named Ralph Winter, who was brought on specifically for his experience wrangling big effects heavy productions. So there was another director on named Michael Pizer. Michael Pizer, I think, and I couldn't find this for sure, but I think he was the producer that had originally outbid them on that script. So he ends up losing his option, but I think he still was able to stay on as a producer, not as high up. It was very confusing, but I think that might be Michael Pizer. But Pizer and there's another co-producer named Ralph Kleiman who worked on this. They realized, along with Jeff Kleeman, how much of Hackers was actually going to rely on visual effects, something they maybe didn't think about when they first read the script. So they're like, you know what, we need to bring on a producer who has a little bit of experience here because none of us do. Ian Softly doesn't. His last movie was about the Beatles, so he doesn't have any experience in visual effects. So we need to bring on the producer who's done this before. So they brought in Ralph Winter, who had previously worked on Star Trek 3, 4, 5, and 6. Yep. All big special effects movies, and he had served as a post-production supervisor on The Wrath of Khan. So he had a lot of experience with this kind of stuff. He knew how to keep a high concept, VFX heavy production on track, and his steady hand helped guide trackers across the finish line.
Yeah, that's the main thing I wanted to even touch on with him. He was the dad who kept the kids from burning down the house, basically.
Yeah. He was brought on kind of late in the process, so he wasn't there for like the development of the script and the casting and all that. He was brought on later on when they're like, oh shit, we got a lot of stuff that we don't know how to do. We need somebody who does.
Well, he also did like, did you see the X-Men films? Because I think he also did those.
Well, that would have been after this, but
he did
that would have been later.
Well, yeah. I just mean like some people might know from that or something, but he was helping the Hackers from crashing the mainframe that was production deadlines and financial sanity. Like he was like, he's just trying to like, let's get this movie wrapped up and done.
Even computer nerds trust Trekkies.
He was adult supervision.
Yeah, exactly. Well, one thing we had to touch on the fashion, obviously, because there are a couple things that you think about when you think of hackers that immediately come to mind. One of them is the fashion. Another one is the music. So while the film itself, we'll get to this, but it never really lit up the box office. Its soundtrack became hugely popular, and for good reason. First of all, the score, I want to mention. The score was composed by Simon Boswell, who, if you look up his filmography, it is wild. He started his career. First credit was Dario Argento's Phenomena, starring Jennifer Connelly. He followed that up with Demons 2, which was produced by Dario Argento. It is a fantastic movie. Both of those have great scores, by the way. And then he just did one after another, like horror movies and genre movies, like for those first few years of his career, including Alejandro Jodorowsky's Santa Sangre, which we have actually covered here on the podcast.
He doesn't even just compose music. He like summons it or something.
Yeah.
It's like architecture for like a movie, the way he does stuff. And he's it's unexpected but oddly perfect choice to score Hackers, because he's not like this mainstream Hollywood composer. Instead, he makes his name like doing Euro horror. And
I think The Crying Game, which was like 92, was probably his first. I wouldn't even call it a big break. Obviously, that was like a very small like indie movie, but it had a big impact when it came out, and it was not a genre movie like these other ones. It wasn't like a horror or sci-fi movie, so that was kind of like one of his first quote-unquote legitimate movies. But he kind of made his name doing small budget horror work in Europe specifically.
Well, and then in Hackers, he comes in and he like does this great job of blending analog like synths and sampling stuff and these drum loops that like it's like this ambient, like industrial sound that doesn't, I don't know, it feels very immersive, like the way that he's using these layered sounds.
He's using some traditional orchestral stuff and then mixing in the synths and the cybernetic kind of like electronic beats and things like that. It's very fitting for the movie.
It's weird. It's like blurs the line between like sound design and like scoring the movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's wicked. He does a really, really great job. Like the soundtrack is the score part of it, and we'll get into the actual soundtrack here in a second, but the score part of it's amazing.
I think it's really good. I tried to find it wasn't streaming when I looked for it today. I like to listen to the scores when I'm writing my notes. And this one wasn't. The only one of his I could find was Santa Sangre, so I listened to that, which is a very different score than this one. But there is one standout track I wanted to mention on here. It's called Grand Central Station. You can probably guess when it is in the movie, but it is credited on the soundtrack and in credits to a band called Deep Cover. But that was later revealed, Deep Cover, because you can't, if you look up a Deep Cover album, you're not going to find them. It was later revealed, like years later, it was revealed to be a collaboration between Pink Floyd guitarist David Gilmour and bassist Guy Pratt with Simon Boswell. Yeah,
What?
so they collaborated with him on it. They talked about it when the film, because for the 25th anniversary, so 5 years ago when the film, the soundtrack was re-released for a 25th anniversary, and they were interviewed by Rolling Stone about it. It was like this unknown thing that they were actually the people behind that track, but it is, David Gilmour and Guy Pratt did that song. That's pretty wild. That's pretty cool. Gary, you mentioned the soundtrack itself, like not the score, but the actual soundtrack. That's really the thing with it. When most people think about the music of this movie, that's what they're actually thinking about. And it is widely celebrated as sort of a definitive snapshot of mid-90s electronic and rave culture. Ian Softly was inspired by, the rave culture was really big, especially in England at the time. And he kind of brought that influence into the movie. And this soundtrack features heavy hitters like The Prodigy and Orbital and Moby and the Chemical Brothers, like all huge figures in electronic music. And it became an iconic artifact of 90s electronic music, gaining its own dedicated following apart from the film.
You sent me an article from like Grammy.com that like talks about the soundtrack of this movie a lot. They discussed how they pick songs. It's pretty detailed, so I would just recommend people like read it. Like it was a little more involved than I think
we need
to go into right now.
It's like an oral history of the Hacker soundtrack. Yeah, it's on the Grammy website.
Yeah, but if I'm looking at it, like I just want to talk about the Hacker soundtrack for a second, I would say this is the thing that outlived the movie and started its old religion. Like I'm not even kidding. Like it was a gateway drug for every suburban teenager who thought techno was just a weird music from like you saw it on Mitsubishi car commercials or something like like that.
Yeah.
This was at that time, like 1 second you're watching Hackers, the next thing you know, you're buying glow sticks on eBay. You're like, do you get your Winamps skins like ready? And you want to pretend like you know
Nobody
what
under the
acid
age of
house.
35 is going to know what that means.
What was the phrase on it? It was like, it really kicks the llama's ass or something like that.
It whips the llama's ass. Yeah.
And the wild part is, even if you have never seen this movie, you've probably heard it.
Yeah.
Like, the soundtrack's been sampled, bootleg, remixed, worshipped, and pressed on vinyl so many times. It has like squatters' rights in every indie record store. It didn't just survive the film, like it transcended it. It's living its best afterlife on college radio stations or something. I remember being at Eastern Illinois University and like hearing the Hacker soundtrack, or like some people were playing stuff that was on the Hacker soundtrack. And I know that it gets used at like late night raves. It's probably like every fucking nerd who's like, I got to code shit till like 4 a.m. Like it's on that Spotify playlist that they made for themselves. And it's like multiple volumes end up getting made for this soundtrack. Like volume 1 dropped in 95. You mentioned it has like the Prodigy, Left Field, Underworld, bangers from those people. And at the time, rave scene wasn't huge for most people, but for people in that scene, these were like the bangers that they were listening to at that time. And it's almost like it was so successful, like it created like this full Hacker cinematic universe, like for just the soundtrack, like remixes, inspired tracks, the whole deal. Like Hackers 3, they're remixing, I think is one of the things or something. And here's the thing, it might be the most important legacy of the whole movie, straight up. Like at the time, this was, I'm trying to put it in perspective, but like this is the time that like American teenagers probably got their first taste of like British and Euro like electronic music right before like EDM blew up. Like rave culture wasn't here yet, but this was a precursor to that. So there's like one of my favorite songs on it is like Orbital's Halcyon, On and On. It's got like an emotional weight to it. Like it feels like it's like a good, I don't know, it's one of the fucking electronic songs I really like.
Yeah.
It's on this movie. Moby's been around, but he does Voodoo Child. I feel like this was the first time I had seen Moby.
Yeah, because I think most people became really familiar with him with Play, which wasn't until like 99, I think. So
yeah, I don't think I knew who Moby was, but I know that I saw the name, and then Moby goes on to be like the DJ guy for a while there. And I guess I'll say too that the influence spread outside of just that. Like there's like video games that have this. Like there was a game called Wipeout I used to play that a lot of this same music was on Wipeout. Grand Theft Auto would use like a station that had music from this same soundtrack.
Wow.
Like, and even the aesthetics from the soundtrack started hitting music videos, like with, if you think of Chemical Brothers and Prodigy and Garbage and Madonna's Ray of Light. And if you think I'm exaggerating, real clubs in like London, Berlin, San Francisco, there were like Hacker soundtrack nights.
Yeah.
Like that they would play this music, full DJ sets based entirely on music from this movie. You can clown the movie all you want if that's what you want to do, but the soundtrack, that shit's eternal. This soundtrack carried on and still carries on.
yeah, and what's weird though is that the soundtrack wasn't actually released in conjunction with the film. They kind of flopped on that because it could have been released ahead of time, built some hype for the movie, and then helped the movie. Instead, it was kind of an afterthought. Like I don't think the soundtrack came out till 1996, the original release. It came out like much later than the film. Once they realized that people wanted it, and then of course, like you said, it became so popular that they did a second and a third volume of it because there was so much music that they could use. But yeah, they just like did not. I don't think the studio or the record company or anyone realized how big it was going to be, or they would have released it ahead of time and it would have probably translated to more box office dollars.
I went into this movie expecting to like not shit on it, but just to laugh about how some things were dated, but then to realize I was way ahead on some other things. You know, like it had a lot that it was prescient about.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
We weren't ready for.
We weren't ready for it. It was ahead of its time. Well, once the film was completed, MGM and United Artists, they scheduled a few early test screenings, mostly for high school and college audiences, because that was sort of the the target audience, and the response was actually overwhelmingly positive. Young viewers really seemed to connect with the film's energy, its rebellious spirit, and its glossy, chaotic vision of cyber culture. But unfortunately, the studio's marketing department didn't share that same enthusiasm. They didn't know what to make of it. They were nervous. It stars two people that nobody's ever heard of. They don't know how to sell this movie or how to even explain it to audiences. What is it? Is it a sci-fi thriller? Is it a team comedy? Is it a cyberpunk heist? It's sort of all of those, honestly. And there's no obvious hook for a mainstream audience. This is unprecedented. What do we sell it as? So instead of leaning into what made Hackers unique, the studio kind of played it safe.
Yeah, it seems like it's the ultimate villain of all these 90s cult classics.
The studio.
Of course, test audiences loved it. You showed 1995 teenagers a movie where there's these fucking rollerblading gods in vinyl pants. They're fighting capitalism with floppy disks. Their little brains are going to go brrr. I don't know. I guess I could see it if like I were a suit in a studio or something. Like you're kind of spooked by like how to market something that seems to defy any specific genre.
Yeah, it doesn't fit into a box.
Because they're probably allergic to risk. It's not just creative. I guess that's like financial. Hackers was probably this studio's like first like cyberpunk adjacent movie that they had ever backed. They'd greenlit it. Technically, I guess as we're talking before all these other cyber films, like this wave of cyber films hits. So they're worried and they're afraid of looking outdated or weird.
I think they just didn't know what to think, honestly. I think they just saw it and they're like, this is not like anything we've ever seen. I don't know how we're supposed to sell a movie like this because nobody's ever tried to sell a movie like this. And so what they do is they end up looking at the release calendar for 1995. Let's see what other movies are coming out. And they notice a trend, the same trend that we noticed when we started this series, is that there are several other films that are on the docket that are dealing with cyber worlds. And they're all scheduled for release this summer, 1995. You've got Johnny Mnemonic. You've got The Net. You've got Virtuosity. They're all hitting theaters between May and August of 1995. So MGM, United Artists, their marketing team decides to hold Hackers until after those films come out, hoping that audiences would be primed for another cyber-themed thriller. So instead of figuring out how to market it, they're like, oh, let's just wait. Then people will get it. They'll understand what kind of movie this is because they will have seen other movies in this genre.
They had the opportunity to be trendsetters and instead.
Exactly, Todd. Like I was looking at this and I'm like, they could have been first, and instead they dropped it after the goddamn Net or whatever, which is Sandra Bullock yelling at a screen like trying to order a pizza on pizza.com or whatever it was she did.
It's pizza.net.
Pizza.net. And so it's like Hackers finished. Like they're ahead of schedule, and if they'd released it early in the summer, it could have set the tone for the whole genre or whatever we're talking about here, this whole series. Instead, they get cold feet and they wait to release it in like September. It makes Hackers seem more reactionary instead of visionary.
Exactly.
It looks like it's chasing the trend instead of being the thing that should have defined the trend.
Exactly. Like they were finished with Hackers early enough to where it could have led that wave of movies. You know, it could have, like you said, set the tone. It could have established and introduced this whole aesthetic and carved out its own lane. But instead, by releasing it in mid-September, it feels old hat. Like it feels like it's just another attempt to cash in on a trend that it could have started, and a trend that was already starting to burn out by that time. So do you guys think, a little question for you, a little bit of I don't know, an exercise here.
Todd does.
Occasionally.
Do you guys think that if Hackers had been released before Johnny Mnemonic and The Net and all those other cyber movies, do you think the conversation around it would have been different at the time? Do you think its legacy would be different?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's one of those ones that's just, I think it's very user friendly. It's very accessible to an audience that knows nothing about hacking, that may feel like they don't understand that particular, not only culture, but that age group that is presented in the film. And I feel like this would have been a nice bridge to at least get a foot in the door. And I think that maybe it wouldn't have been a generation defining movie like you mentioned earlier, but I think the landscape would be a little different.
I mean, it wouldn't feel necessarily like a Johnny Come Lately, which is, I think, what ended up happening.
That does
Yeah.
feel like what
Yeah, for
happened,
sure.
but I gotta say, Todd, you make an excellent point. Like I wasn't sure, and then you saying that like kind of tilting me more towards your mindset on it. I didn't find Hackers because it was in theaters, so
Yeah.
I remember my buddy John like bringing it over to my house on like VHS or something, and like we watched it and we dug it. Like I feel like Hackers transcended that. Like Hackers somehow just like found its audience.
Yeah, but I'm talking about like if it had been released earlier in the year, would that have necessarily been the case, or would
I don't
people
know.
have,
I guess
you know?
that's what I'm saying. Is I don't know that it would have made any difference to me.
I think it would have made a difference culturally and overall, though, because, like we said, it came after the net, so it felt like it was riding on the net's coattails a little bit. And that
Do you really think though that like people that were watching Hackers were like, yeah, but the net?
I think that people could have seen ads for it and been like, "We've been there and done that," and that movie had a big movie star in it, and this one stars a bunch of people that I've never heard of, so I'm not going to bother.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird to
Yeah.
put yourself back there where like TV was everything and commercials were everything, and like how your perspective would have shifted based on marketing. It's interesting to think about. Like I don't know. I feel like it found its audience.
It did. I mean, we're going to get to that. I'm just talking about, this is total, speculation.
Could it have been a bigger movie in general if it had released earlier? I don't know.
Hackers hit U.S. theaters on September 15th, 1995, and it kind of flopped. I mean, it really flopped, like hard. On a budget of $20 million, it opened in fourth place with just $3.2 million that first weekend. And it barely made $7.5 million total in its domestic box office. And it disappeared from theaters in less than 2 weeks.
That's not a flop. That is a system crash. We're talking blue screen of death with little Clippy in the corner going, it looks like you tried to make a genre defining film. Would you like to fail?
Oh, man.
So total domestic gross, like negative 7.5 million.
No, it's a positive 7.5, but that's a negative, 12 and a half from what it cost to make.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it's brutal. But remember, I will say Hackers, I did read Hackers was released in under 12,000 or 1,200 theaters. Modest, even for like a mid-tier release. So, it feels like MGM barely promoted it. Like they didn't want to overspend on marketing for it or something.
Which is a shame because like the poster is actually really good. Both versions of the poster are really good. Their only crime is curiosity is a great tagline because it comes directly from the Hacker Manifesto and it sounds cool even if you've never read the Hacker Manifesto. And I think one of the posters says like boot up or shut up, which that's good. That's
that's
good.
not bad.
Like that's good. But whatever it was, it did not work. And
well, September is also a graveyard for genre film.
I know that's why they
90s.
shouldn't have held it back. Like that's a terrible time to release it.
It's where you go to die without.
Terrible time to release it. Cool. School's already got back in, and your target audience is high school kids. Like it's a lot of bad decisions were being made. So the movie flopped as far as like the financial gain, and critics were not exactly kind either. What's particularly ironic is that despite all of the effort that was made to ensure the film's tech was grounded in real hacking culture, all of that research that Raphael Moreau did, many reviewers dismissed it as totally unrealistic. And I think part of that was because they didn't understand that this was actually where the tech was going. So they thought it was like space age, like Star Trek shit. They're like, there's no way, this is like silly. But obviously it was a heightened version of it, but it was still grounded in science and in reality. But critics didn't seem to get that. Even Roger Ebert, good old Roger Ebert, who gave the film a pretty generous 3 out of 4 stars, pretty good review, generally a positive review. He even said the movie, this is a quote, the movie is smart and entertaining as long as you don't take the computer stuff too seriously. So that was a positive review.
Just the stuff that comprises the main plot.
Everything about the movie.
Well, you're saying that, but like everything I just said about like even when we went into our further viewing and stuff, it was like he got it. Like it's more about the vibes more than the tech specs. Of the thing.
Some reviewers were more forgiving of its style over substance approach. Peter Stack of the San Francisco Chronicle praised its visuals, writing, What it lacks in substance and plausibility, it makes up for in inventive imagery and deft shadings of a world of scheming cyberpunks, that's a good quote. That's good. Good job, Peter Stack. That's good.
Good for you, buddy.
Jonathan Rosenbaum of the Chicago Reader was one of the few critics to grasp the film's playful energy. He said, without being any sort of miracle, this is an engaging and lively exploitation fantasy thriller about computer hackers, anarchistic in spirit, that succeeds at just about everything the net failed to. So
No,
yeah.
well, I looked this up when I saw your notes, and he's contrasting it with the net, which he completely panned. And that's I don't know how many Jonathan Rosenbaum reviews I've read that I've been into, but he is it's rare praise for a film that everybody else is just like shrugging off, like that they don't care.
Yeah, I mean, because not everyone was as generous as these guys were being. David Kroenke of the LA Times dismissed the film, writing that it, quote, gives you more insight into the minds of Hollywood hacks than of computer hackers.
That's good.
That's good. I got to give them credit.
Yeah, that's solid wordplay.
You gotta give them credit.
Yep. Good job.
Owen Gleiberman, who we have discussed ad nauseum, I feel like, on this podcast, because he's always kind of a crank. He's up there with old fucking Rex Reed, I feel like.
Snippy little bitch.
Owen Gleiberman at Entertainment Weekly took particular offense at what he saw as the film's blind hero worship of its hacker protagonist, saying, quote, what's most grating about hackers is the guileless way the movie buys into the computer kid as elite rebel mystique currently being peddled by magazines like Wired. Spoken like a true old fart.
And let me also add, get off my lawn.
I'm sorry, Owen. Are you mad because Angelina Jolie didn't hack your pants off? He criticized it for glamorizing hackers like Wired magazine did. Ironically, that's exactly why fans love it. Like that's the thing of this movie.
The movie, when it came out, like we said, the critics just didn't know what to make of it. For the most part, there were some, but most critics just didn't really know what to make of it. But here's the thing. Hackers wasn't really made for critics at the LA Times or Entertainment Weekly. It was made for kids, for high schoolers and college students, anyone who saw the internet not as a utility, but as a playground. Like, this is like the new frontier. This is a revolution, or it could a potential revolution. And those are the kids who showed up to watch this movie, just not in theaters. When Hackers hit home video a few months later, that's when it really started to build an audience. Teens rented it. You said, Gary, I think you even mentioned that's when you first saw it. You know, you rented it, or a buddy rented it, and that's how you saw it. You didn't see it in the theaters. That's how I saw it. College kids passed around bootlegs. It made its way into dorm rooms and LAN parties, and slowly but surely, Hackers transformed from a box office bomb into a cult classic. And those same kids who are now adults, we're the proof of it, are the ones who will still champion the movie 30 years later.
And that's the thing with this movie that we got to establish, that we often cover on this show. This is a true cult movie. If we're there now, let's say it. This is a cult classic. Can't get around it. Yeah. Theaters failed, but home video exploded. It's become a rite of passage for like a lot of tech nerds and cyberpunks and internet people. Like,
I mean, that's
what this is.
That's the most basic definition of a cult classic, is that it was, ignored in theaters and rediscovered later on. It might have been rediscovered a few months later or a few years later, but it was rediscovered and not only rediscovered, but embraced and loved, and not loved by everybody. Because as for people on Cinema Shock Plus, you got to hear Gary's reading reviews from Letterboxd and places like that. There are people that still don't get it, or still don't love it, or actively hate it. It seems like.
Yeah.
But that's every cult movie. That's Rocky Horror Picture Show, the ultimate cult movie. That's a lot of the movies that we talk about on this show. There are people who love them and people who don't. But the people who love a cult movie, like, really love it, like they embrace it. It becomes like important to them. And I think Hackers has become that for a lot of people, especially people like our age and a little bit younger, and a little bit older.
Yeah,
what
well, I
people,
mean, we're talking about the 90s here, but then,
yeah,
like by the, like at a certain point, people were chanting like "mess with the best, I like the rest" while they're setting up their Napster account, and so
right.
that's even a generation removed now.
Hmm.
By the early 2000s, like hackers was a go-to reference on like online forums and
Yeah.
websites like Slashdot, something awful, and it had already ascended in the early 2000s, I feel like, into like internet meme royalty, like
Yeah.
memes that had a meme. Like this was already beyond.
Yeah. I mean, the scene of Fisher Stevens rolling up on a skateboard is made to be turned into a GIF, right? Well, I guess the big question about this is why has Hackers become a cult classic? I mean, it's easy to say, hey, it's that movie where pre-fame Angelina Jolie has a pixie cut and rollerblades through a rave. Like, but that's kind of more of like the bar trivia answer than an actual reason for the film's longevity. That's why people would know it, but not why people keep talking about it and keep watching it. So what is it that makes this movie, which is one of the weirdest and arguably least successful of the 90s cyber thrillers that we're talking about, what is it about this that sticks in people's brains decades later, long after the net and even, I hate to say it because I love it, but virtuosity have mostly been relegated to a kind of like, wait, that was a real movie status?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
is it about this movie that you think makes people keep coming back to it or keep talking about it? Is
I,
it a kitsch factor? Is it a nostalgia thing? Like what exactly is it?
I think personally, it is some of us. It's us that grew up during this time period. We talked about how the script was developed authentically. So there is enough real in the story that I think most of our generation can connect to. I mean, there's obviously things in it that are so far outside of the norm or like, unrealistic or stupid looking, however you want to put it. But I think there's enough that like we can connect to. The same misunderstood weirdos who loved this movie are the same people that became the tech elite right now, who are already in positions of power and in cybersecurity and game development and Silicon Valley and startups. And they didn't love hackers; they lived hackers. This is the movie that tried to understand them, and
Mhm.
and they could see that. I think MGM finally even eventually leaned into it. Obviously, with like we have the 4K and
Yeah. The
the
soundtrack
restoration
came
and
out
whatever.
on like Record Store Day a few years ago, and yeah, it's definitely
Yeah.
they know that it has an audience now.
And it's not even about realism. Again,
No,
I've talked about this a number of times, and especially in my like further viewing, it's not even about like it's real or more of this movie is about the vibe. It's about the identity, the rebellion, the feeling of something about being young and wired, and just there's like I don't know how to put my finger on it. Like that there's something different about that like people from our generation get with hackers that they don't get from Virtuosity and Johnny Mnemonic and those movies.
I think something you hit on, Gary, early on is it comes from a place of authenticity. The writer went and started hanging out with these kids, and really, it wasn't something that, oh, I read this article, so I'm gonna write this thing, or I saw this documentary, so I'm gonna write this thing. It's like, no, these kids are hanging out. Like I'm hanging out with these kids. They are talking right to me about their world. So when it comes from a place of authenticity, you're looking at a story told from that place is easier to latch onto. I know I mentioned earlier the accessibility or the user friendliness of a particular narrative makes it easier for folks to grab onto. Now, in terms of the legacy of why do we still like it? I think because when you find that thing that you latch onto, especially at that age, it kind of reminds you a little bit of that. And I even had base elements like, because I was prepared to watch, I hadn't watched Hackers in years and years and years. And so when I sat down to watch this, I thought this was going to be kind of just a fun trip down nostalgia lane, and the whole thing. But as I was watching, I was like, oh, this is a really good movie. Like, and, watching the group interact within, their own little worlds, it makes you think of not only the group of friends you had in high school, but also the group of friends you have now of like, oh, I could see someone as a Lord Nikon, and I could see someone else as a Joey. I could see someone else as a serial killer. Like,
You fucking nailed it. Like,
yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's it.
I
Yeah.
think the authenticity of those relationships, the plot almost becomes irrelevant.
Yeah.
Because you're looking at these characters trying to do something. And I think that's universal.
Yeah, even though it exists in a very heightened version of reality, there's still that grounding of like to use your word, authenticity.
Yeah.
Like there's still that as a base, even though everything on the surface is a little heightened and a little like crazy compared to like real life.
It's so weird because I don't know if I ever, because of this show, that this has mattered as much to me, but like so many times now when we hit like Jodorowsky or like Lynch or whoever else that I'm talking about, like vibe, I keep saying vibe. I feel like I hate myself for saying vibe, but like this is another one of those fucking movies that like I would look at it and I'm like, this is a vibe movie. It's not a movie. It's like a vibe. It's like a feeling that you get that you would understand if you were there, or like you have to put yourself in, and it's like chaotic, horny, glitchcore, rollerblades, it's rebellion, it's mixtape. It's like I don't know, even fucking Angelina Jolie's part of it. Like it's like there's like Angelina Jolie is in this, and it's like but this is like early Angelina Jolie,
like Elvin Angelina Jolie. Yeah.
yeah, and
Right.
it's like that's important. That is part of this thing. And is it realistic? No. Did it flop? Yes. Does it matter? Yeah, I think it does. Like it feels like in that moment it was Kazan, Winamp, and like Photoshop 5 and like fucking I don't know, Napster and everything else coming together. And it's weird. It's like critics don't get that. It wasn't about computers. It's about what Todd was talking about. It's about connection. It's about like finding your people. And it's like this, it's also about community. It's about these people finding the other people that are like them. It's like a generation of like, I don't know. You're like in this weird fucking like middle
the
ground
Muppets.
of, yeah, it was, I hate that you did that, but yeah, I think that is true. But it is like for our culture that's like in this place, like this is a movie that was made exactly. And well, because people talk about like there's Gen X and there's like millennials, and people like we're technically millennials, right? But
Elder
like
millennials,
but people
I believe is
but people will say like there's like a different term for us because we were like analog for the first half of our life and digital for the second.
Zennials.
Yeah, like the Zennials thing. And it's like this is the movie for those people.
Yeah.
Like this movie really fits that part because it was made at a time where people didn't like fully grasp digital, like they didn't fully grasp like what the internet was going to become.
It seemed
But
way out there, and now it seems antiquated. Like back then, it felt like this is unrealistic because we're never gonna get to this. This is like Star Wars, Star Trek, sci-fi stuff, and now we look at it, we're like, that's quaint, like the tech.
Yeah. Well, it's weird because like we've gone through these movies like Virtuosity and Johnny Mnemonic, and this movie isn't trying to do that, but it's like it's still for the generation of like bird CDs and like it's just it's I don't know. It's hard to say. Like it's just like this. Like we were in AOL chat rooms and Ask Jeeves and like having LAN parties and we played Halo and like like this is like that same. I don't know. Hackers doesn't work hard to necessarily predict anything specific. Just like the feeling.
Yeah.
And,
it's kind of like that vibe of like again, you're talking about a cast of characters who are at a very specific time in their life. They're all like juniors, seniors in high school, and the world awaits them. But at the same time, they're in this unique position to kind of have a very specific foothold on a type of power in the world, and that's information. And I think that kind of goes to that connection that we all had at this, like, again, because the three of us are of a particular age, that at that time, being in high school, you're still kind of powerless, for lack of a better term,
Mhm.
but having access to the internet, even in its, infancy, was such a form of power. So it's a unique experience
And
being
and
young
freedom
Okay.
and
and
freedom.
freedom. Yeah. So it's all these base elements that are universal and frankly timeless.
Well, Todd, and you just stepped on something else that I had not thought about until you just said it. So God bless you because you keep doing this to me. But also that your online presence matters as much as your real world presence.
Yeah.
Like who you are, yeah, like as a name online is, I don't think anybody understood that at the time. Like when they're talking about who Zero Cool is or who Acid Bird is, like that's something versus like
That's their
who the
identity, yeah.
person. Yeah. It's as much their identity as who they are in regular life. And people, I don't think at the time grasps how much that's true. That's accurate. Like who you are online is as is important.
Yeah. From a narrative standpoint, I think it's an interesting take on the fish out of water trope. Crash Override comes to new city across the country. He is out of his element. He is out of
Yeah.
his world. But they don't realize that he's not the small fish in this big pond. He is the shark.
Yeah,
in
he's the
this
king of
pond.
the king
Yeah.
of the ocean. Exactly.
So it's an interesting thing to play with narratively.
Well, I think this is really interesting because the direction that you guys are going and your thoughts on the film are great and not at all where I was going with it, which just goes to prove that there is no single answer as to why this movie has longevity. It's different things to different people. Like the connection between the people, that's something I hadn't really considered, but you're absolutely right. And that's part of it. I think there's also, on a surface level, there's the obvious answer as to why this movie has longevity, and that is the camp factor. I mean, a lot of people are going to watch it ironically, and which is fine if that's how you want to enjoy it, because this movie is ridiculous at times and gloriously so. I mean, I love the fashion in this movie, but it is insane. It is like a Hot Topic exploded in a Tron convention.
Yeah.
And you've got like production design that suggests that cyberpunks live in lava lamps, and a villain who, lest we forget, is literally just a corporate IT guy with a secret lair, like a lair.
Yeah.
Why would he have that? Why would he have that giant screen? It's ridiculous, but that's part of the fun, is because it is heightened and over the top.
Yeah.
And then you've got like the quote unquote high tech dialogue of the film, which, people watching it at the time, like some of those reviewers, like the professional reviewers, thought it was ridiculous because it was so like outlandish. But now it's like these guys are having an absolute panic over a 28.8 BPS modem. If any of us were forced to use a 28.8 modem today in the year of our Lord 2025, we would jump out of a goddamn window. Like we would put an ice pick through our brains because that would drive us insane.
Yeah.
So it's funny though, because you can watch the movie from an ironic distance like that. We're like, oh, that's silly. Like look how old fashioned it was. But what's hilarious is that so much of it is based on real research. Like we've talked a lot about how hard Ian Softley and Raphael Moreau worked to accurately portray hacker culture, and yet we still get lines of dialogue like "You're in the butter zone," which Lord Nikon says. I believe Lord Nikon is the one who says that. You're in the butter zone, talking about Angelina Jolie's laptop. And I'm sorry, that sounds less like something a hacker would say and more like something that Guy Fieri would shout while eating a jalapeno popper. But all of that the fashion, the slang, the rollerblading, because let's not forget the rollerblading.
Oh, the rollerblading.
Like, that's all part, and we haven't mentioned the two Japanese guys who have their
Oh,
TV show.
Oh no, Razor and Blade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who are great, and they're wearing like white make. I don't. They're insane characters. I
Yeah.
love them. I love them, and I would watch their show. But this was all like part of Softly and Moreau's sincere attempt to make something edgy and ahead of its time. And as far as like the fashion and all that stuff is what they thought like teenagers were going to be looking like and doing and wearing 15 seconds in the future, they completely missed the mark on that. And that ends up being part of the film's charm. Because it's a film that's sort of trying so hard to be cool that it ends up creating its own category of cool completely by accident. Like, you know, like it becomes so uncool that it comes back around to actually being cool again.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of people do watch Hackers for the camp, and they watch it ironically, and that's fine. But I think there's also something deeper, something more earnest at the heart of it that has also helped it endure. And I think you guys hit on part of that with what you were talking about with the relationship with the way that the teenagers are portrayed, because they do feel like, while they don't really feel like real teenagers that we recognize, the way they interact with each other feels real. Like, you know.
Yeah.
But even if the movie kind of botches the lingo or overdoes the aesthetics, which I love all of that stuff, but it is not part of the authentic nature of the film. The authentic nature of the film lies underneath the surface. And where it really nails it is in its depiction of these sort of young, idealistic rebels using the internet as a tool for resistance. Like, these kids might be pranking the FBI or quoting the Hacker Manifesto, but they've got a moral code. You know, they believe in truth and justice and in exposing corruption, even if it means, you know, crashing a few TV stations and rollerblading through data temples along the way. There's also this sort of, they do have that moral center that they operate from, but there's also a sort of resentment and distrust of authority that like any teenager is going to connect to, right? And there's a prankishness to their shenanigans. And with those things in mind, you can't help but also compare them to modern hacktivist groups like Anonymous, you know? And notice, I don't know if you guys noticed this. I noticed it when I watched it, and I had never noticed it before, but like when Crash hacks the TV station, the show that's airing is hosted by this sort of Alex Jones type.
Yep.
That's screaming about immigrants. And the show is called America First. Now, if that's not
fucking wild.
Now, if that's not like weirdly prescient, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
And he hacks it to show the Outer Limits, not because he wants to watch the Outer Limits, or not only because he wants to watch Outer Limits, but because he wants to silence this blowhard asshole who's screaming racist propaganda on television. So you watch Hackers now, and it's impossible not to draw parallels to groups like Anonymous or to whistleblowers like Edward Snowden or Julian Assange, because the film's central conflict, the idea that leaking proof of corruption is treated worse than the corruption itself, is really more relevant today than it was in 1995.
Yeah.
Well, bro, this is the same thing I was talking about when I was talking about they were going after these fucking hackers for just like sitting in bank servers rather than like, oh, you've got like stockbrokers like insider trading and doing their thing, and like you're just more concerned that these people ended up on your server
than with
just
the guy
looking
who's
around.
like embezzling money. You know,
Yeah,
you're more
exactly.
concerned with the guy who exposed the embezzler than the embezzler. And
Yeah.
and you know, and I think that's really where Hackers is at its most prescient in its attitude. Its anti-authority, pro-citizen attitude. It's not prescient in its technology, but it's got this sort of punk rock streak of anarchy running through it. And if you look past the silliness of it and the utter mid-90s-ness of it, you'll find that at its heart, Hackers is really a movie about resistance, about the youth rising up. And when I was doing some research on this, I came upon a Substack article written by a guy named Nicholas Slayton. And he wrote, I loved this paragraph from him. He wrote, When you boil down the plot, the story of Hackers is of a diverse group of young, politically engaged activists preventing Wall Street executives from staging an environmental disaster as a cover for white-collar crime, all while evading the abusive force of law enforcement happily helping Wall Street. That's downright radical these days.
It shows you that like the same thing that those hackers were dealing with at the very beginning in the 80s is still the thing that would be going on right now. It's like I think I know people that would hate me for saying this, but I'm just gonna say it like that like Edward Snowden or something, that he like goes in and finds out that like the government is spying on you on every aspect of your telephone calls or your like text messages, and like he just like releases that to the media,
And then
that's,
he's
like,
the bad guy for releasing it as opposed to the
Yeah.
government who is doing this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
just like, I just took this to people just to like put this out.
Yeah.
That like this is what's happening, but I'm exposing government information, so I'm the criminal now.
Exactly.
Versus, you know, like I'm just telling you that they're looking at everything you're doing.
Yeah.
and I
And
don't know.
that's what this movie is also about, because that's what the plague is willing to destroy the environment to essentially to make money. Like, you know, so beneath all of its neon nonsense, Hackers at its core is just, it's punk as fuck. But it also presents a vision of the internet that's utopian in a way that we rarely see anymore. Like, it imagines the web as the great equalizer. One where race, gender, sexuality, and place of origin, geography do not matter.
Which
It's
is
not-
literally the thing they said in the Hacker Manifesto.
Exactly. And that's where they're coming from. And it's not being naive. It's being idealistic. And that idealism has become sort of a time capsule when you watch this. It's a snapshot of what we hoped that the internet could be before social media turned it into a place where your uncle gets radicalized by ads for protein powder and conspiracy theories. The movie doesn't predict the corporate stranglehold that the internet would eventually fall under. That's one thing that it doesn't quite do. It could not, I don't think, have foreseen that today's web would mostly be used to harvest your data and sell your garbage and funnel you into algorithmic rage spirals. But it does show how easily this powerful tool can be corrupted by people in power, because that's what the plague does. The plague isn't just some hacker villain. He's a disinformation merchant who's hijacking the truth for personal profit. And that sounds a little familiar in 2025.
Yeah.
So yeah, Hackers it's silly and it's messy and it's deeply aggressively 90s, but it's also anti-authority, anti-corporate, pro-youth, pro-knowledge, and honestly a little bit prophetic in a way that I didn't expect when I first watched it, because I was just watching it for the nostalgia factor.
You're hitting the nail on the head, man.
You just have to kind of be willing to look past the trench coats and the rollerblades and the
Matthew Lillard's braids.
and the day glow like black light painting. That place looks cool though. Cyberdelia, the club.
Yeah.
I would hang out there. That place is rad.
For all it's like chaos, Hackers is kind of a miracle. Watching it this time, I was just like, this movie should absolutely not work. The dialogue is insane. The fashion looks like a rave broke out in Circuit City or something. I don't know. The key to it is it's not about like computers or internet or any of that stuff. It's about belonging to something or believing in something. This movie is about this anxious kid who did not fit into the world, and he has an idea of the world as it could be, and he's building an identity through this like online persona, which sounded crazy at the time in the 90s, but is 100% a thing that people do now through code, mixtapes, message boards, whatever it is, Reddit. It's but somehow you find like your crew that understands you better than like your fucking classmates do.
Yeah.
And you do your thing. And so you find connection through all of the static that is everything else. That's this movie that I'm not trying to act like it's Citizen Kane or something, but I'm just saying like it was ahead of its time on understanding how these things would work. It's easy to laugh at like rollerblades and Crash Override and Matthew Lillard being the fucking unhinged dickhead. Seeing how quick he could flex his neck muscles or something. Like he was like, it was. But beyond all of that, there is a story in Hackers that is about questioning power. You don't have to be perfect to be seen, and you don't have to be normal to make an impact. I don't know. It's sometimes just having the courage to speak up and just speak out. Maybe I'm romanticizing it too much, but it feels like Hackers is really good at being the counterculture, and it helps shape the counterculture, and it shows you like there's other ways to be the counterculture than what you originally thought. There are other ways to resonate through society or something. Hackers does a good job of showing you that there are other paths to this, and there are other personas you can take on, and whatever way you can get your voice out there, there are those ways. Like Matthew Lillard's character, for instance, in this movie is not a person that could like step out onto the public square and speak and be heard, but by the end of this movie is a person that everybody will listen to and hear and see who they are. And that's cool.
So after this movie, I mean, we know where Angelina Jolie went after this. I don't think I need to give a rundown of where her career went after this. Matthew Lillard, the year after this, he made Scream, probably his most iconic role, the thing that'll be on his obituary when this is the guy who played Stu in Scream. Johnny Lee Miller, not as big of a star as everyone else, but he did Train Spotting right after this, which is one of the quintessential 90s movies. And, he's been in everything from that Sherlock show that he was in, the Sherlock Holmes show. And he was in Dexter. He was one of the bad guys in Dexter for a while.
I don't want to step on everything, but I will say that like Matthew Lillard and Angelina Jolie do deserve credit. Like in this movie, they stand out. They are the personalities that you recognize, and they're part of the reason this movie is bigger than it
100%.
should
Oh,
be.
absolutely. And they show that they've got real staying power, and as they've both proven, obviously. Ian Softly's career's been a little weird. I mean, he's done a lot of movies. He did like The Skeleton Key. Remember that one? The horror movie. I think it had Kate Hudson in it, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That one. He did K-Pax with Kevin Spacey, where Kevin Spacey plays the alien. But his movie right after this is interesting. It's a movie called The Wings of a Dove. It's a British period piece, and it stars Helena Bonham Carter, and it is the movie that David Fincher saw that convinced him to put her in Fight Club.
Oh, wow.
We mentioned it during that Fight Club episode, and that was directed by Ian Softly. Raphael Moreau does not have very many credits after this. He did The Rage Carry 2 in 1999, and that's sort of it. So this did not really help his career because, the movie kind of flopped. And, Hackers, while not a box office smash by any means, still managed to carve out a permanent space in pop culture. From its wild fashion and psychedelic technobabble to its prophetic glimpse into hacktivism culture, the movie captured a spirit of rebellion that still resonates. I think we've proven that by our conversation. It was a movie that was ahead of its time, even if the world didn't know quite what to make of it in 1995. And behind the scenes, it was a mix of ambition, experimentation, and youthful energy, which you can still feel in every frame, I think. Whether you see it as a misunderstood cult classic or a chaotic snapshot of 90s cyber anxiety, one thing is clear. Hackers didn't just predict the rise of digital counterculture, it helped to define it. Well, next week on Cinema Shock, we are continuing this series. We're continuing our look at the virtual cyber thrillers of the 90s. And we're headed to the land of the rising sun for one of the very few animated films that we've ever discussed on this show. We've only done one or two in the past, I think. In our next episode, we will be discussing Mamoru Oshii's cyberpunk anime classic, Ghost in the Shell.
I'm really looking forward to this. This is going to be fun.
I'm cheating a little bit on it because it came out in the US in 1996, but it premiered in Japan in 95. So I count it as a 1995 cyber thriller.
Yeah, that absolutely counts.
Yeah. I'm excited to watch it. I'm excited to dig into how it was made. So join us here for that one next week on Cinema Shock, at least the first half of that, if you're not a subscriber to Cinema Shock Plus, but you should be, cinemashock.net/plus. Well, with that, I think it's time to wrap it up. Where can you guys be found on the internet?
I am at This is Gary Horn, all spelled out.
And you can find my Star Trek podcast at Computer Resume and all my D&D nerdiness at Ds20 Live. And I'm at Mr. Todd A. Davis on Instagram.
I've tried to give your handles twice in a row. Last time it was Computer Resume. I'm just having an identity crisis here. I am at Justin_Bishop on all the stuff. On the show is at cinema_shock or at cinemashock.net, which is your home for all things Cinema Shock. All of our episodes, of course, links to merch, links to our Discord, links to Cinema Shock Plus, and to all of our social media stuff is on there. Like, rate, review. And until next time,
may the wings of liberty never lose a feather.
And be excellent to each other. And hack the planet.
FYI, man. All right. You could sit at home and do like absolutely nothing, and your name goes through like 17 computers a day. 1984? Yeah, right, man. That's a typo. Johnny is here now. He's living large, and we have no keys, man. No keys. We are keyless.
I love Todd.
Yeah, bravo.